Toma decides that things are getting out of hand, and if he doesn't get his act together, Magnus will find out his secret. He suddenly starts acting tough, telling Magnus not to order him around. The redhead magician says that this mission is important for peace and begins telling him the details. The founder of the Cram School is a famous alchemist called Aurelius, who went off the grid 3 years ago, and no one heard of him till he came back. The person he is holding as a captive in his school is a girl who possesses the power called Deep Blood that is the only way to kill vampires. Toma is shocked to learn that vampires exist, and Magnus says that even most magicians didn't believe in their existence. But the power Deep Blood exists only to kill vampires, and if it exists, then vampires must too. He explains that his mission is to infiltrate the Cram School and retrieve the girl with this special power, and Toma is going to join him too. Toma refuses to take part in something so dangerous, and Magnus threatens him that if he doesn't cooperate, he will take Index away from him. Toma is taken aback as Magnus explains that the only reason the church has allowed Index to stay with him is to make sure that she doesn't turn against them. However, if he begins to disobey the church, they will think of him as a threat and take her back. He tells Toma to make his choice wisely, and then leaves. Later, Toma and Index return to their room, where Index has something to say. She puts her hand at the bulge in her belly, and Toma asks whose child it is because he for sure didn't knock her up. The bulge suddenly begins moving through the cloak, and Toma confronts Index about what she is hiding. The kitten she saw on the road earlier pops its head out of her collar, and Toma freaks out, reminding Index that he told her that pets are off limits. Index argues with him, saying that as a nun, it is her duty to save those who are discarded, and she is going to save the kitten. Toma tries convincing her, but she is too adamant about it, and he gives up. He then tells Index to look after the house as he has to go out on an errand, and she tells him she will take care of everything. Once outside the house, Toma finds Magnus pasting his runes all over the wall because he wants to leave his fire spirit here to protect Index in case other magicians target her. Toma asks him if he has a thing for Index, and Magnus suddenly turns red as he tries to deny it. Anyway, they head out on their mission and come to the building where the Cram School is located. Toma says that it does not look anything like an evil gang's hideout, and Magnus tells him to not underestimate their enemy, who was regarded as one of the best alchemists in the world. He gives Toma the picture of their target, and to his surprise, it is the same girl he saw in the restaurant earlier. They enter the building, and while everything looks normal at first, Toma spots a knight lying down near a pillar. He approaches it to see what is happening, but as he realizes that it is a dead body, he freaks out. Toma asks why no one is noticing this dead body placed out in the open, and Magnus says that a special barrier has been cast over this building that separates it into two dimensions that are in the same space don't overlap. While the students live normal lives on one side of the barrier, the other side is full of dark secrets. The students have no idea about the other side of the building, and they can't interact with it as well. Toma decides to use his ability to break the barrier, but Magnus tells him that it won't be possible unless he destroys the barrier's core. They head deeper into the building to find their target, and Toma asks why they are taking stairs instead of elevators. Magnus says that they are on the other side of the building where technology probably doesn't work, and Toma decides to see if he can at least use his phone. He calls Index to see if he can, and the call goes through. Index tells him that she ate the food he has left for himself in the fridge, and Toma gets angry. However, he decides not to dwell on it and cuts the call, only to find Magnus staring at him. He says that Toma lacks tension because he is chatting up with a girl, even when they are on a mission. He begins grumbling about it, and Toma asks if he is jealous. Magnus gets flustered again, and then tells Toma not to get carried away. He tells her that in the past, there were other people in Index's life who were in his position. No matter how much they cared for her, she forgot them when her memories were erased. Magnus says that once he was also the most important person to Index, but while he failed to protect her memories, Toma succeeded. After that discussion, they go to the classrooms, which don't appear suspicious at all. Suddenly, the students begin staring at them, and Magnus says that it should not be possible because they are on different sides. The students begin chanting a spell in unison, and Magnus realizes that it is an automatic mechanism to bring them to this side in case there is danger. A bright light comes out of the students' foreheads, and Magnus panics. He decides to run away first, telling Toma to deal with them all using his Imagine Breaker power. Well, Toma doesn't think he can do it, so he also runs as fast as he can, with the lights chasing after him. Magnus says that this is a very high-level spell and should not be possible with just the amount of students in this building. They try to run to the stairs, but the floating lights come from the lower floor too. Magnus just pushes Toma towards them so that he can escape, and Toma is left perplexed about what he should do. Suddenly, a girl comes there and begins chanting a spell. Her body suffers cuts out of nowhere, and Toma asks her to stop because the spell is hurting her. However, she doesn't listen to him and loses consciousness just as the spell is complete. The floating lights begin gathering to attack Toma, but before they hit him, they suddenly freeze in the air and then fall to the ground. Toma wonders what is happening and then turns back to see that the priestess from before saved him. She comes to the girl and says that she has only suffered minor injuries and would be fine with a bit of first aid. She asks Toma to assist her while she patches up the girl and begins undressing her. Toma tries to turn the other way, but she tells him that it is a dishonor to their patient, and he helps her in treating the girl. After they are done, Toma compliments the priestess's skills, asking her if she is some kind of unlicensed doctor. The girl named Asa says that she is just better at seeing the flow of blood than anyone else. She tells Toma to leave this place now, but he says that she is going to come with him because he won't let her stay captive here. However, Asa tells him that she has a purpose that can be fulfilled only if she stays in this place. She says that she has been staying in this place even before Aurelius took over because she doesn't want to be found by vampires. Toma asks if she is afraid of them, and Asa says that she is afraid of killing them without need. She states that vampires are no different than humans in their nature. Her blood smells extremely sweet and alluring, so it attracts the vampires to her and kills them without fail. She doesn't want to kill them when they have done nothing wrong, so she stays in this place of her own will. She explains that she came to Academy City in hopes that they would find a way to cure her power, but they were unable to do anything. Toma asks her why she was outside today if she doesn't want to attract vampires, and Asa says that it was on Aurelius's orders. She says that Aurelius approached her with a deal. He wanted her to attract vampires because he needed them to save someone. He promised her that he wouldn't harm the vampires, so she agreed to work with him to save lives. Toma doesn't believe in Aurelius's words at all, and he tells Asa that he is a cruel man who can use students as weapons. He says that she should get away from him as soon as he can, and just then, Aurelius comes there. He has heard everything, and he tells Toma that he won't be able to take the girl away. He suddenly covers the considerable distance between them within an instant, and as Toma tries to punch him, he finds him farther away than he was. Toma wonders what is happening when Aurelius decides to use his magic to send him flying with just words. However, Asa steps in front of Toma and confronts Aurelius about his motive. She says that if he is a lowly person who needs to kill this harmless guy to protect himself, she will stop working with him. Aurelius can't let that happen, so he promises to not harm Toma at all. Instead, he takes out a long pin and pierces his neck, telling Toma that he will forget everything he saw here. On the other hand, Index has grown worried about Toma since he didn't return home till late, so she goes looking for him. She is shocked to see the runes outside the house, and following their magic trail, she reaches the cram school building. Meanwhile, Toma comes back to his senses in a park near the building. Magnus is with him too, and his memories have also been wiped off clean by Aurelius. He tells Toma that he feels like he is forgetting something, but if he can't remember it, it probably wasn't important. Toma agrees, but then he scratches his head, undoing Aurelius's hypnosis. He suddenly remembers everything and tells Magnus that he can perform a ritual to make him remember things too. He asks Magnus to close his eyes and stick his tongue out, and he does that despite his doubts. Toma uses this chance to land a strong uppercut to his jaw as revenge for treating him like a decoy. Meanwhile, Index has entered the cram school building, and she finds out the barrier that separates the building into two planes of existence. Aurelius comes out to greet her, saying that it has been a long time, but obviously Index doesn't remember him. Aurelius says that he was not expecting to find her here, but it is the best piece of luck he could hope for. He uses his magic to make her fall asleep, just as Toma and Magnus reach the building. They find the comrades of the dead knight standing outside the building to kill Aurelius. They use their magic power to unleash a tremendous spell that brings down the two towers of the building, but then suddenly, the damage gets rewinded, and the building is as good as ever. Magnus says that is the true power of Aurelius, and it is not going to be easy to beat it. Just then, Toma hears a familiar mewing sound, and as he turns around, he finds the kitten crawling under Index's robe. Toma freaks out as he realizes that Index came here and begins worrying that she is in danger. Meanwhile, Aurelius carries her to his office, with Asa in tow. Toma and Magnus charge into the building, and Toma keeps voicing his worries about Index. Magnus tells him to relax because Aurelius won't harm Index, and then suddenly, he realizes what his true goal is. In the office, Aurelius looks affectionately at Index, telling her that today, her suffering ends. He tells Asa to lure the vampires here because this is what he needed her help for, and if she can save Index, they will be able to find a way to save her too. Asa is about to do as he says, when suddenly, Toma and Magnus barge into the room. While Toma is worried about Index, Magnus is quite calm because he knows that Aurelius cares for Index. He reveals to Toma that Aurelius was also once the girl's guardian just like them, and he probably went underground 3 years ago to look for a way to save her. Instead of clearly revealing that the dangerous spell on Index has been undone, this redhead asshole keeps telling Aurelius that no matter what, he will not be able to save Index. Aurelius takes that as an insult to his efforts and explains his plan in detail. He says that Index's memory has to be wiped off only because she is a mortal human whose brain can't handle the vast amount of information. But if she becomes an undying vampire, she won't have to be bothered by that. He says that this is all for saving Index, but it somehow pisses Toma off when he thinks that Aurelius is going to turn her into a vampire. After getting a full-blown reaction from Aurelius, Magnus finally decides to come clean. He says that the reason he will never succeed in saving Index is because there is no need for it. He reveals that Index has already been saved by Toma, and since he was in isolation for the past 3 years, he might not have learned about it. Aurelius is perplexed and asks them to explain how a human with no special ability can save Index while she is still a human. Magnus tells him about Toma's special ability that managed to remove the dangerous spells from Index, and Aurelius is unable to believe it. Magnus says that just as every single one of Index's partners wished, she can live happily now, but the credit goes to Toma. Aurelius feels that he has acquired a generational aura debt because of this failure, and he feels betrayed that someone else got to save Index. Suddenly, Index begins talking in her sleep, calling Toma's name and asking him for food. Magnus starts laughing at this, and Toma joins him, but Aurelius is pissed. He uses his power speech to pin them to the ground for trampling on his feelings. He stabs his necks and uses his power speech to immediately kill them, but Asa comes in front of him again. She tells Aurelius that she knows how he feels, and Toma tells her to get away because Aurelius doesn't need her anymore. He bites his thumb to free himself from Aurelius's spell, who stabs himself again, and uses his power speech to kill Asa. Toma rushes towards her as Asa falls down, her life replaying in her mind. Ever since she was little, she attracted vampires, who could not resist the smell of her sweet blood. They knew they would die, but they still tried to drink her blood. But just a little contact with it was enough to vaporize them. She didn't want to hurt anyone, so when Aurelius approached her with an offer to use her powers to help someone, she took his hand because she knew he was honest. However, now that he has lost his purpose, he has turned against her. Toma holds Asa in his arms as Aurelius laughs, saying that he doesn't need her anymore. He says that he also kept his promise to her and freed her from her cursed life. Suddenly, Asa comes back to her senses, and Aurelius panics, asking Toma how the hell did he cancel his power speech. Toma tells him to shut the hell up, or he will make him. He places Asa on the ground as he gets ready to face the alchemist, who draws out another pin and stabs his throat. He orders Toma to die by choking, but he cancels it out with his ability. Next, Aurelius orders him to die by electrocution, but Toma cancels the electric attack too. Aurelius then commands him to be crushed under a car, and a car suddenly manifests out of nowhere and begins falling on him. However, a touch of Toma's right hand is able to nullify that. He is confident that he can win at this rate, but Aurelius knows how to use his words without a loophole. He commands to make a powerful gun, which appears in his right hand. He shoots a bullet that whizzes past Toma and creates a huge hole in the wall behind. Toma panics, but Aurelius says that he won't kill him before having fun tormenting him. He summons 5 such guns in each hand and shoots Toma, but all the shots were dud, just to scare him. Aurelius walks closer to torment him even more, and Magnus mocks him and his power speech. Aurelius says that it is the greatest technique of alchemists that can bend reality to their will, and Magnus asks if it is so great, why did he need Asa's help? He says that Aurelius could just have used his words to create vampires out of thin air, and this rubs the alchemist the wrong way. He lifts Magnus up in the air and does what Cassandra Nova did to the Human Torch in Deadpool and Wolverine. Oops. Spoiler. Toma almost throws up on seeing this, but then he begins to ponder over Magnus' questions. He wonders why Aurelius didn't just use his power to save Index. He thinks that there must be something else behind his ability, and suddenly, he gets the trick. In the meantime, Aurelius decides to finish Toma because he is getting impatient now. He morphs his gun into a sword and shoots it at Toma's right arm, severing it instantly. He says that now that Toma can no longer use his weird power, he doesn't stand a chance. But then suddenly, Toma starts laughing like a madman. Seeing his psychopath side, Aurelius is taken aback. He is confused and tries shooting him with the sword gun again, but misses his shot. He summons 10 sword guns and shoots Toma, but misses every single shot. He tries to summon guillotines to end him, but they vanish before even hitting him. Aurelius panics as he stumbles away from Toma, wondering why he is not able to harm him. He even drops his needles while taking them out, and as he fumbles to collect them, Toma stares menacingly over him, asking why he even needs those. Is the best piece of luck he could hope for. He uses his magic to make her fall asleep. Just as Toma and Magnus reach the building, they find the comrades of the dead knight, and the building is as good as ever. Magnus says that is the true power of Aurelius, and it is not going to be easy to beat it. Just then, Toma hears a familiar mewing sound, and as he turns around, he finds the kitten crawling under Index's robe. Toma freaks out as he realizes that Index came here and begins worrying. Pants now, and he runs to Index's side and cowers in fear. He thinks that his power speech is losing its efficiency, and then suddenly tries to snap himself out of it. He gets up to face Toma again, but then finds that Magnus has recovered from his earlier attack and is holding Index right now. He turns to the other side, finding Toma, who reveals that he has found the secret behind his power. He has realized that Aurelius's power speech doesn't twist the laws of reality, but makes real the things he can imagine. And his mind has some very short limits when it comes to that. That is why he uses the needles to keep his senses sharp and drive all the useless thoughts with the pain. Seeing him unfazed even after losing an arm, Aurelius thinks that Toma is a monster, and his power backfires on him as a monster manifests in place of Toma's arm and finishes the alchemist off. The next day, Toma is admitted to the hospital, and the same old doctor has reattached his arm. Toma says that he didn't think it would be so easy to attach it back, and the doctor says he himself is surprised by his own skill. He says that it is unbelievable that Toma is admitted here twice for serious cases within just 2 weeks and asks if he deliberately comes here for the nurses. Toma asks him if he really thinks that he would tear off his arm just to see some nurses, and the doctor gets disappointed in him and leaves. Just then, Magnus comes there with a basket of apples and begins peeling them. He tells Toma not to get used to this behavior, but this is the least he can do for him right now. Toma then asks him about the monster that manifested from his arm, and Magnus says that it must have been the manifestation of Aurelius's despair. Toma asks what happened to Aurelius, and Magnus tells him that he lost his magic and memories. He wanted to deal with him for good, so he changed his appearance and let him loose in the wild. The cram school has been shut down as well, and Magnus thinks that if Aurelius had handled the situation more calmly, he would still be fine. He calls Toma a daredevil for intimidating a seasoned magician even after losing an arm, and Toma says that he is something of an Oscar-worthy actor himself. He says that it was hard to pretend to be menacing when he was in so much pain, and Magnus says that the pain must have numbed his fear. Just then, they hear Index's voice, and Magnus vanishes before she can discover him. Index climbs on top of Toma and acts angry because he saved another girl this time. Toma asks her who told her this, and Asa comes out of hiding, saying that she did. Toma asks her why she is here and if she came together with Index. Index says that she didn't want to, but Asa was insistent on thanking him, so she brought her along. She reveals that the church has decided to take Asa in, and Toma tells her that it doesn't seem to be the best idea. Suddenly, the kitten pops out of Index's robe and scratches Toma's face before running away. Index chases after it, creating a mess in the room, and Toma can only scream at her. Asa also says that they should have left the cat in the dorm room, and Toma asks if she has been there. His attention gets diverted to the ruckus caused by Index and the cat again, and Asa just smiles as she sees them so lively. Takemichi was an ugly, disgusting, worthless loser who wasted his life after his first girlfriend was killed and got bullied by kids every day as he barely afforded to pay his rent. However, when he realized he was going to die a virgin, a hand pushed him in front of Train-kun. But in his final moments, the only thing he thought about was his first love, Takibana Hinata. As he regained consciousness, he saw a younger version of himself before a mirror, so when he checked the date on his phone, he realized that he had traveled 12 years into the past. But although he was glad to see his childhood friends once again, he remembered the events that occurred on this day. But before he could warn them, they were suddenly ambushed by a group of third-year thugs. The shortest face in the group tried telling the thugs that they were all friends with their leader Masaru, but one of the morons just laughed at his statement before ordering Masaru to buy some drinks for them. As the little bitch went to get them drinks, Takemichi's squad were almost beaten to death, and none of them were able to fight back. As his nose leaked out spaghetti sauce, Takemichi remembered how his entire life went downhill from that point, and he yelled out to the god of this world for making him relive such a terrible event. But for a brief moment, the image of his middle school girlfriend popped up in his memory, and Takemichi realized that her death in the future was caused by the same group of douchebags. So rather than following his friends back home, Takemichi rushed over to see her one last time. But when Hinata opened up the door, she became concerned about how jacked up his face was. And because he was used to being treated like shit all the time, Takemichi couldn't stop the tears from flowing out. But when he tried leaving quickly, Hinata held him back and said that he should open up to her about what happened. After crying his heart out to Hinata like a beta male, Takemichi went over to sulk about his life by the swing set. But he was interrupted by a group of kids who were trying to bully an innocent student. Pissed off by the consistent yelling, Takemichi got up and punched one of them in the face, before breaking an empty bottle and scaring the others away by threatening to tear their lungs out. When the bullies had left, Takemichi advised the kid to stand up for himself next time, and after they got talking, the student introduced himself as Hinata's younger brother Takabana Naoto. Remembering that Naoto was also dead in the future, Takemichi went back to sulking by the playground, and he confessed to Naoto that Hinata was the only girl he had ever loved in his entire life. Confused by this statement, Takemichi told him that he had managed to travel back in time after surviving a train accident. And for some reason, Naoto actually believed his creepy sci-fi story. However, he told Naoto to protect his sister by all means necessary, because in exactly 12 years from now, both him and Hinata would die after getting caught up in a deadly war. Naoto was shocked to hear this, but when the two of them shook hands to seal the promise, a time machine suddenly activated, and Takemichi woke up to find himself in a hospital room back at the present. He wondered if it had all been just a dream, but then he noticed that there were no bruises on his body, and a mysterious man in a gray suit walked up to him saying that he was Naoto. Takemichi was surprised to hear this, but Naoto said that he had taken his words on that day very seriously, forcing him to study hard and become a police officer in order to protect his family. However, despite saving Takemichi from the train accident, Naoto was unable to protect his sister from the school war, and he said that Takemichi was the only one capable of keeping her alive. Taking him back to his house, Naoto told Takemichi that his time travel powers were unique, because he was only able to travel back 12 years into the past from any given moment in the present. And to make sure that their plan to save Hinata was successful, Naoto forced Takemichi to stay up all night reading everything about the notorious Tokyo Manji gang. Noticing his reaction to the bloody image of a man on the computer, Naoto told Takemichi that the man was his former partner, who was brutally murdered after trying to infiltrate the gang's hideout. He also said that the only way to prevent Hinata from dying was for Takemichi to go back in time and stop the current leaders of the Tokyo Manji gang from ever meeting each other in the past. However, Takemichi didn't even know how to use his powers to begin with, so Naoto told him that the key to activating his time traveler sequence was for both of them to shake hands again. Although he thought that Naoto was a bit crazy, Takemichi was really desperate to save Hinata, so he grabbed his hand and got teleported into the past again, right in the middle of a fist fight. Shocked that the plan had actually worked, Takemichi checked the date on his phone to confirm, but he chickened out of the fight at the last minute, allowing his opponent to punch him into a coma. When he finally woke up, Takemichi got his ass kicked again for losing the match, which made him remember how he and his friends slaved away for the biker gang until they left middle school. But when the dumbass blurted out that he wanted to meet the actual leaders of their gang, one of the seniors, Kiyomasa, whacked Takemichi with a baseball bat until his eyes turned white. Kiyomasa warned him to never speak about their leaders again, and because Takemichi was scared out of his fucking mind, he ran across the city looking like an escaped prisoner. Thinking that he was too useless to save Hinata, Takemichi walked up to their house so that he could shake hands with Naoto and return to the present. But he ended up meeting Hinata instead, who called him an idiot for getting into another fight, saying that she should have been the guy in their relationship because Takemichi was too much of a crybaby to protect himself. Carried away by the jokes, Takemichi said that he could make her cry all night in her room like an African parent.
What did he say?
They kept on laughing until Takemichi forgot the reason why he had visited in the first place, and he waved Hinata goodbye before returning home for the night. The next morning, Takemichi met up with his friends in the male bathroom, where the leader of the crew Akon told them that the next fist fight was between Takuya and a student from another school. Everyone was shocked to hear this, because Takuya was the weakest guy in their group who couldn't even beat up a Hinata, and they were scared that he was going to get murdered in the arena. However, Akon said that there was nothing they could do to change it, and Takuya spoke up for himself, saying that he was going to avenge Takemichi by defeating his opponent with a single punch. But by the time they had gotten to the fight zone, Takuya was already sweating and losing his nerve, and he was about to piss himself before the match actually started. Then out of nowhere, Takemichi shouted for the fight to stop, and while everyone wondered what a damn rooster was doing in the arena, Takemichi walked up to Kiyomasa and challenged him to a battle. Excited to put the punk in his place, Kiyomasa accepted the challenge and went straight for Takemichi's gut, before beating him up until he staggered like a character from an action-based video game. Impressed by the kid's balls, Kiyomasa dropped his cancer stick to the ground and was ready to crush them. So as the crowd went wild with excitement, he kept on punching Takemichi until the loser saw heaven's gates. Meanwhile, Akon brought out his pocket knife and was prepared to stab Kiyomasa with it. But before he could make a move, everyone noticed that Takemichi was struggling to hold on despite all the beating. His friends tried telling him to tap out of the fight, but Takemichi just stood his ground and said that he was going to win or die trying. So Kiyomasa replied saying that he was going to make sure of it. However, before anything crazy could happen, a tall man with blonde hair arrived to shut it down, and after observing his facial features, the guys quickly recognized him as Draken, the vice commander of the Tokyo Manji gang. They noticed a little nerd walking right behind him, and after everyone in the stadium bowed down to greet the midget, Takemichi realized that he was Sano Mikey, the grand commander of the Tokyo Manji gang. Mikey walked past Kiyomasa and his crew like they were a bunch of worthless insects, before facing Takemichi and telling him to become his new friend because of how he displayed passion on the battlefield. Takemichi was shocked by his request, but Mikey didn't wait for a response and he went over to beat up Kiyomasa for starting the useless fight club, before walking out of the arena with Draken. Later that night, the guys praised Takemichi for standing up to Kiyomasa and becoming Mikey's new bestie. But Takemichi was worried that he had only just leveled up his errand boy rank. While the others were busy goofing around, Akon opened up to Takemichi about how he had wanted to kill Kiyomasa during the match, and he thanked him for saving their asses from those biker freaks. On his way to school the next morning, Takemichi was having a hard time keeping his eyes open. But when Hinata walked up to him, saying that they should go on a date later that day, the dumbass quickly became energized. While struggling to focus in class, Takemichi heard a loud noise coming from outside, and he almost lost his mind when Mikey walked into the classroom, asking him to come and hang out with them. He also noticed that Draken had managed to single-handedly defeat all of the third-year students, and the vice commander asked the losers to lie down on the ground, before stepping on all of them like floor mats. Takemichi tried telling them that he already had plans, but while everyone was surprised to see the leaders of the Tokyo Manji gang in their school, Hinata walked up to them and bitch-slapped Mikey in the face. Grabbing Takemichi's hand, Hinata pulled him away from the bullies, but Draken held her back, saying that he was going to rip her useless arms off and use them to warm up his meat at night. However, because Takemichi had promised to always protect Hinata, he squeezed Draken's shoulder and told the mofo to let go of his girl, saying that she was the one person he could never give up on. Disappointed with his betrayal, Mikey said that it was time for Takemichi to meet the gods. And as he walked up to end his worthless life, Takemichi said that Hinata was way more important to him than their stupid friendship. Annoyed by his simp talk, Mikey moved closer to punch his useless face, but then stopped halfway, before laughing and calling Takemichi an idiot for thinking that he would ever hurt him because of a girl. While he was still in shock from what had just happened, Draken called Takemichi an og for standing up to him and defending his girl, even though the odds were clearly against him. Realizing that she had screwed up big time, Hinata apologized to Mikey for slapping him like that, but he told her not to worry, because he respected any girl who was brave enough to take on a gang leader. After she had left, Mikey told Takemichi to take good care of Hinata because she was a keeper, and they headed out to enjoy the evening breeze while riding their bicycles through the park. Asking why he had chosen him as a friend, Mikey said that Takemichi reminded him a lot of his dead brother, who loved to pick fights with guys that were stronger than him. Stopping to watch the golden sunset, Mikey said that he planned on bringing a new age of revival to the Tokyo Manji gang, and that he wanted Takemichi to be a huge part of it. After he and Draken rode off in their bicycles, Takemichi walked back home wondering how someone as gentle as Mikey would end up being responsible for Hinata's death in the future. The following day, Takemichi and Hinata went out for some shopping, But after realizing that her boyfriend's grades were just as terrible as his backshots, Hinata decided to help him study for an upcoming test. They went over to her place, and Takemichi couldn't contain his excitement about how pretty the room was. But then Hinata's mom arrived with the drinks, while asking if they needed some Netflix to set the mood. Embarrassed by her mom's riz, Hinata chased the old lady away, and after studying hard all night with Takemichi, she thanked him for saving her brother from those thugs the other day. She said that he had influenced her brother in a big way, because all Naoto ever talked about now was how he wanted to become a great police officer in the future. Takemichi was excited to hear the story behind how Naoto became a cop, but Hinata just stared at him with cute eyes, saying that he had changed completely from the reckless and immature guy that she used to know. He laughed awkwardly to avoid blurting out his secret by accident, and when Hinata noticed the fireworks outside, she invited him to watch them together with her on the rooftop. Taking advantage of the mood, Takemichi walked up to Hinata and held her soft hands. But when he turned around to stare into her pretty eyes, the dumbass realized that he was holding Naoto's hand instead. So in a flash, the time sequence got activated and Takemichi found himself back at the present, yelling at Naoto for appearing at the wrong time and being such a useless cock-blocker. However, Naoto was glad that his handshake theory had actually worked, and although he was pissed at Takemichi for returning by accident, he had finally cracked the code to unlock his powers. Asking if he had found any of the gang leaders, Takemichi said that he had met up with Sano Mikey, but that Mikey seemed too innocent for all the big crimes that the current gang has committed. Naoto was annoyed by his statement, because he believed that Mikey had started the war which led to his sister's death. But Takemichi said that he wanted to meet the present-day Mikey and talk things out with him. He believed that someone else must have turned Mikey into a ruthless killer, and because Naoto was impressed by his confidence, he agreed to help Takemichi locate the gang leader. After going through numerous files and web pages, Naoto finally found something useful. But when Takemichi walked over to look at the screen, he was shocked to see that Akon was now a member of the Tokyo Manji gang. Naoto was also shocked to hear the news, because Akon had been arrested many years ago for stabbing Kiyomasa, and that's when they realized that Takemichi's little time travel experience had altered the present, because Akon was now a top dog in the gang. Naoto said that locating him was their ticket to meeting Mikey, so they went over to Takemichi's old apartment to retrieve his phone number. But when Naoto walked into the room, he was just seconds away from coming down with the coronavirus because of how disgusting the place was, so he stepped out to grab a face mask and a pair of gloves for protection. Takemichi eventually found the book where he stored all of his school memories, and after dialing Akon's number on his phone, they were directed to a 5-star hotel located downtown. Naoto was a bit suspicious that Akon would just invite them to his hotel on such short notice, and he tried warning Takemichi to stay alert. But the moron wasn't ready to listen. Walking through the entrance door, Takemichi was about to bust a nut from staring at all the hot MILFs. But he kept his cool, and told the manager that they were here to see Akon instead. After confirming their names on the list, the manager led them straight to the lounge, where they met up with Akon, who now looked like a rap artist that was addicted to smoking weed. He took Takemichi to the roof for a private chat, and after the both of them were done catching up on old times, Takemichi said that Akon was practically living the dream life compared to his. But Akon replied saying that there were some things that money just couldn't buy, and he surprised Takemichi by telling him that he knew all about how Hinata's brother was now a police officer. However, Takemichi got the biggest shock of his life when Akon revealed to him that he was the one who pushed him into the train tracks that afternoon when he almost died. But somehow, Naoto had arrived just in time to save his ass, so Akon tried asking if he had acquired the legendary power of time travel. But Takemichi just pushed him away, saying that he had turned into a crazy lunatic. Fighting back the tears, Takemichi found it hard to believe that his friend would do such a thing. But Akon apologized to him, saying that he was only following orders from the boss man Kisaki Teta. He explained that Kisaki had been the one running things in the gang for quite a while, and that Mikey had switched sides to become an outlaw after the day that Draken died. Takemichi was shocked to hear about Draken's death, but before he could convince his friend to step off the pillar, Akon jumped down like Spider-Man to hug Gwen Stacy on the ground. After crying like a toddler on the rooftop, Takemichi met up with Naoto down downstairs, telling him that Kisaki was the actual villain, and that he wasn't going to rest until he brought everyone back. Meanwhile, after disappearing to the past and not showing up to work for over 2 weeks, Takemichi's boss at the video store got fed up with him, and she fired his sorry ass without any pay. So to make life much easier, Takemichi tried suggesting to Naoto that they should just tell Hinata about her future. But Naoto called him an idiot, because Hinata could easily just break up with him after hearing such a thing. The only option was for Takemichi to go back in time and fix things the hard way. But when he started sulking over Draken's death, Naoto searched up an article online showing how he had died after getting ambushed by a rival gang. Takemichi was shocked by the date on the article because it meant that he only had 3 weeks left to save Draken. But Naoto said that a personal beef between Mikey and Draken was probably what led to his death. Not sure what to believe in, Takemichi said that he was going to protect Draken and save everyone like they had planned. So he shook hands with Naoto and got warped back into the past. However, when he opened his eyes, Takemichi saw 2 huge reasons to give up his mission and become a milkman. But because the shoddy was too much for his virgin plot gun to handle, he ran out of the room looking like a maniac. Stopping to catch his breath, Takemichi hoped that his girlfriend would never find out about what happened. But in that moment, Hinata appeared behind him, asking what the hell he was talking about. He started making up dumb excuses to avoid the question. But when Hinata said that he had been acting weird lately, Takemichi realized that his past grumpy self must have taken over when he returned to the present. He got a call from Draken, telling him to come over for an impromptu gang meeting, and because she wanted to spend more time with him, Hinata decided to tag along as well. When they got to the location, Hinata was creeped out by how shady the place looked, and when the biker gang finally arrived, 2 of the crew members attacked Takemichi for crashing the party. However, one of the division leaders, Takashi Mitsuya, told the guys to let him go because Takemichi was the commander's guest, and he took the both of them to meet up with Mikey. Draken was also around, and he apologized to Hinata for scaring her the other day at school, before ordering one of his biker hoes to come over and serve as her bodyguard for the night. But when Takemichi saw those familiar plot cannons from afar, he knew that there was trouble. And after hearing what went down between the both of them, Hinata took out all of her anger on Takemichi's useless face. The hottie, whose name was Emma, apologized to Takemichi for causing him trouble, saying that she had only given him a private show at the hotel because she wanted Draken to get jealous and take her out on a date. When the meeting began, Mikey stood on the podium to talk about their rivalry with another gang known as Mobius. But before Takemichi knew what was going on, 2 guys ambushed him from behind and kicked him to the ground. One of the guys, Pachin, who was the division leader for the 3rd district, hated Takemichi because of what happened with Kiyomasa, and he wanted to teach the runt a lesson. However, Draken told him to sit his fat ass down, and Mitsuya explained that Pa was only pissed because the Mobius gang had beaten up his best friend and clapped the dude's girlfriend right in front of him.
Damn!
Takemichi was shocked that something like that would happen. But Mitsuya told him that the Mobius gang was more badass than theirs, and controlled more than half of the city's major areas. With a stern look on his face, Mikey asked the gang what they should do to Mobius in return, and when Pa said that he wanted to rip all of their hearts out, Mikey smiled like a maniac, before ordering war on their ruthless rivals. After the gang meeting, Takemichi spent the entire night thinking about a plan to keep Draken safe, and he decided that the best way was for him to become Draken's bodyguard. But when Draken saw the look of desperation on his worthless face, he turned down the offer without a second thought, so Takemichi decided to follow him around the city instead. While observing them at a restaurant, Takemichi realized that Mikey only ever showed his playful side to Draken, and that Draken was sort of like his big brother, giving him piggyback rides after he fell asleep. He followed them to a hospital, where Draken and Mikey paid a visit to the girlfriend of Pa's buddy, who had climaxed so hard after getting both of her cheeks clapped that she fell on her face and became unconscious. The girl's parents arrived moments later, and as the old man called them a bunch of worthless criminals, Mikey wanted to punch his teeth out, but Draken forced him to bow down as a sign of respect to the elderly. They kept their heads bowed throughout, while the man and his wife broke down in tears and walked away. And Draken told Mikey that it was important for all gang leaders to show sympathy towards other people. After seeing how it all went down, Takemichi realized that Draken was the voice of reason behind all of Mikey's actions, which explained why the gang went rogue in the future after he died. When they left the hospital, Mitsuya rode over to pick up Mikey, saying that there was going to be another meeting tomorrow, and Draken just nodded before walking away. But along the way, Draken remembered his early days of how his parents had abandoned him on the streets, forcing him to live in a whorehouse with a couple of college baddies. He quickly became the toughest guy in school, with all the students worshipping him like a god, and when he was just 10 years old, he decided to get a dragon tattoo on his temple, changing his name from just Ken to Draken. Because he was taller than most kids his age, Draken easily dominated everyone in a fight. But when the seniors heard about this, they brought Draken to their secret lair, warning him to keep his fighting habits in control. And as punishment for his actions, the seniors told Draken to look for another student in the 7th grade who had also been causing a lot of trouble lately, and bring him over to them. Apparently the guy had beaten up the leader of a high school gang, and when Draken rushed over to find this wonder kid, he was excited by the fact that there was someone who could finally match up to his strength. However, when Draken finally found him, he was shocked to see that it was just a short kid with no muscles, and he wondered how this little brat was able to take down an entire army of grown-up men. The boy introduced himself as Sono Mikey, and Draken was scared that he was leading him to an early grave. But when they got back to the hideout, Mikey surprised everyone by bashing his foot into the gang leader's face. Terrified by his overpowered abilities, the other crew members ran for their dear lives. But Draken stayed back because of how cool Mikey was, and the two of them became best friends in no time. Back at the present, Takemichi and Naoto went out to learn more about the Mobius crew, but when they found the past leader of the gang, they were shocked to see that the guy was now a useless construction worker. Meeting up with him in a restaurant, the man whose name was Asanai looked very shy and reserved at first, but when Naoto asked him about Draken's death, he banged the table and said that he knew nothing about it. Naoto stayed calm and kept repeating the same question, until Asanai broke down crying and told them that a bigger boss had hired the Mobius gang to start a war between Mikey and Draken. After saying all that he could remember, Asanai walked out of the restaurant, and when they got back to the office, Naoto said that the only solution was for Takemichi to go back and stop the two gangs from ever fighting. But when he got back to the past, Takemichi was shocked to see himself riding a bicycle with Akon. And that was when he realized that the real Akon from his childhood would always keep living on. He advised Akon to take his life seriously and focus on his dreams of owning a celebrity hair salon in the future, before running off to find Mikey and the other gang members. When he got to the abandoned building where the meeting was held, Takemichi tried telling the leaders to cancel the fight. But Pa got angry and started beating the crap out of him for being an annoying pest. Mikey said that the decision to fight the Mobius gang was final, but when Takemichi fell to the ground and started groveling like a pig, Draken said that they should probably do some research before going into battle. Annoyed by his statement, Mikey called Draken a spineless loser, and the both of them were about to have a little showdown of their own when Asanai suddenly arrived at the hideout. Seeing the man that ruined his friend's life, Pa got angry and charged at him like the Hulk. But Asanai dodged his blow before finishing him off with one punch like Saitama. Asanai said that he had heard all about their plans, and because he loved to fight dirty, he decided to bring the war to them instead, along with his army of 50 samurai soldiers. Although they were outnumbered, Mikey didn't flinch one bit, and he stood up to face Asanai, calling him a coward for bringing an entire battalion to fight against a bunch of middle school kids. Takemichi, on the other hand, kept on staring at Asanai, wondering how he turned into such a loser in the future, and when Asanai noticed this, he walked up to him and punched the stupid look off his face. Pa held him back from throwing any more punches, saying that the fight was between the two of them alone, and he pushed Takemichi to the side before the shitface could mess things up again. Mikey told Takemichi to sit down and enjoy the fight, but Asanai beat the shit out of Pa so much that the fatso became unconscious from drinking all the red wine that spilled out of his face. He eventually fell down on Mikey's shoulders, and after laying Pa on the floor to rest, Mikey walked up to Asanai and smashed him to the ground with his signature kickboxing move. Everyone in the room was shocked, and Mikey said that his gang could never lose to theirs in a million years. But Asanai wasn't done yet, and he grabbed a broken bottle before charging straight at Mikey. However, Draken appeared right on time to block his path, and he jammed his knee right into Asanai's nutsack, before allowing the glass bottle to fall down and shatter. After putting fear in the minds of the crew members, Draken yelled out that because Mikey had defeated their worthless leader, all of them had officially become members of the Tokyo Manji gang. Takemichi was shocked that they had actually won. But at that moment, everyone heard cop sirens outside, and they knew that it was time to bail, so Draken told the Mobius guys to come back and take Asanai with them. But suddenly, Pa got up and stabbed the mofo in the back with his pocket knife, so Draken pushed him to the ground before he could kill him and put them all in trouble. Everyone was shocked by what he did, and because the cops were getting closer to their hideout, Mikey yelled at Pa to run out with them. But Pa said that he was going to stay back and turn himself into the police. With no time to lose, Draken grabbed Mikey and bolted out of the shed, with Takemichi following right behind them. And when the cops arrived, they arrested Pa and all the other Mobius guys who were still around. Along the way, Takemichi began to feel woozy and he fainted in the middle of the road. But luckily when he woke up in the hospital the next day, Emma was right there to give him some vitamin B to stay active. Asking her about the other gang members, Emma became emotional, saying that Draken and Mikey had gotten into a fight over the issue of Pa's arrest, causing the whole gang to split in two. Takemichi finally understood what Asanai told them at the restaurant, and he hated himself for falling asleep at such a crucial moment. But Emma was really sad about everything, so she fell down on his lap crying. And when Hinata arrived to greet Takemichi, she was so shocked to see him getting some Gok Gok 3000 from Emma, who was still grieving, that she punched him back into a coma. When he got back home, Takemichi was so bored that he finished an entire puzzle set, so his friends came over to keep him company and tell him the bad news about the Tokyo Manji gang. However, they all started to laugh at his face, saying that Mikey and Draken's fight was a minor thing that always happened, and so it couldn't possibly make the gang part ways. At that moment, Draken suddenly walked through the door with a watermelon in his hand, and when they were done eating it, he told Takemichi that Pa was going to be in jail for a whole year. Takemichi tried chasing after him to figure out why, but when they got outside, Mikey was standing right in front of the house, and the both of them started arguing about who was a better friend to Takemichi. Scared that something worse could happen, Takemichi tried telling them to chill out, but Draken grabbed his shirt and was about to transfer the aggression to him, so Mikey got mad and threw a freaking bicycle at him. The both of them kept throwing stuff at each other, destroying all of Takemichi's precious memories, and when it was too much for him to handle, Takemichi transformed into a fire lord and was ready to burn them alive. He tried punching Mikey on the face but fell into a garbage pile instead, and when he got back up, Takemichi wanted to strangle Draken like a chicken. But his friends quickly arrived to stop him from doing something crazy. Tired of seeing them battle against each other, Takemichi fell down crying, saying that their stupid cat fight was going to be the reason that the entire gang turned rogue in the future. However, nobody understood what he was saying, and when Mikey told Takemichi that a piece of shit was stuck inside his hair, everyone started laughing at him instead, and the guys suddenly became friends again. They went to the park, where Mikey and Draken apologized to each other, and Takemichi realized that they were only fighting because of their conflicting opinions regarding what happened to Pa. While he was celebrating the success of his mission, the girls met up with Takemichi, and after much persuasion from Emma, Hinata asked him to be her date for the Dragon Festival. Emma was shocked that the guys were back together, but Draken told her that the fight wasn't even real to begin with, and while the girls chatted about the festival, Takemichi joined the boys to play soccer and have a fun time. The next evening at the festival, the girls arrived in their beautiful dresses, and while Takemichi was super excited to see Hinata, Draken didn't give a shit about what Emma was wearing. Hinata said that she wanted Emma and Draken to become a couple, and when Takemichi asked how the both of them became friends, she said that Emma was a good person who was just desperate for some manly attention. However, Hinata hadn't forgotten all about his little private show with Emma, and to redeem himself, she said that he had to win a special prize for her at the local shooting game. But Takemichi was bad at shooting his shot on both girls and games, so he ended up making a fool of himself and wasting all of his money without winning a single prize. Hinata laughed at his bad luck, but when rain started to pour down, they quickly ran into the forest to avoid getting soaked, and Takemichi realized that they had somehow ended up alone. Because his wood was getting harder than the trees around, Takemichi decided to take advantage of the situation and get freaky.
Takemichi-kun. 携帯鳴ってるよ。誰だこんな大事な時に。
He told him that some of the gang members weren't too happy about the reunion, and that they planned on attacking Draken later on that night. But Takemichi was shocked because he thought that he had already fixed everything. Although Homeboy had a terrible case of the blue balls, he was forced to leave Hinata and search for Draken instead, while cursing himself along the way for getting distracted by the festival. He stopped running after spotting some gang members from afar, but was shocked to see Kiyomasa with a blade in his hand, saying that he was going to kill Draken for ruining his life. Takemichi wondered what to do with this info, but then Joker Face suddenly found him and dragged him into the open, while the other guys made fun of him, ordering him to get them drinks like they did with his cousin. He tried getting up to fight Kiyomasa, but when Takemichi remembered that he was just a loser without Mikey and Draken's help, he started apologizing while they kicked his ass on the ground. After tying him up in duct tape, Kiyomasa stomped his foot on Takemichi's useless face, saying that he was going to kill Draken and put the blame on him, before walking away with his crew. Luckily, Hinata was able to track him down, and when she took the tape off his mouth, Takemichi told her to leave him there to die, because he was too much of a worthless failure to save anyone's life. However, Hinata bent over to kiss his lips, causing all the raindrops to glow, and she said that although he was a pussy compared to Mikey and Draken, he was still her man and she believed in him more than anyone else. After getting a power-up from his favorite girl, Takemichi ran back to find Draken and warn him about the attack. But along the way, he met up with Mitsuya, who had also heard of the attack and drove over to stop it. But when Takemichi said that it was Kiyomasa who wanted to kill Draken, Mitsuya was surprised because his intel had told him that the real villain was Pei Yan, the 3rd Division Vice Captain. Meanwhile, as Draken and Emma were walking back home, Pei suddenly appeared behind them, and when Draken noticed the sinister look in his eyes, he told Emma to stay back before walking up to face him. Pei was pissed because of what happened to Pa at the hideout, and Draken told him to bring it on. But a Mobius gang member suddenly arrived and whacked him on the head with a baseball bat. Takemichi and Mitsuya quickly ran over to warn Draken about the planned attack, but when they got to the parking lot, they saw that he was already busy beating up some Mobius scum. Emma called Pei a worthless coward for ambushing Draken with an entire squad, and because he was starting to become unconscious, Draken sat down on the ground and told Mitsuya to take over. The Mobius guys started laughing because they felt that there was no way Mitsuya could take them on. But at that moment, Mikey arrived on his motorcycle looking like a total badass. He yelled at Pei for siding with their rivals, and when he asked him who was behind all of this, a tall creep with a cancer stick in his hand walked up to Mikey, introducing himself as Hanma, the new leader of the Mobius gang. However, Mikey didn't give a shit about him, and he threw his trademark kick at the loser to bring him down. But Hanma stopped his foot in mid-air, shocking Mitsuya and everyone around. Hanma told Mikey to chill out, because the party was just getting started, and he ordered his men to kill all 4 of them unless he would carve their hearts out with his bare hands. Takemichi was confused by the surprising turn of events, and he wondered how he was going to save Draken now. But before he knew it, 100 guys arrived with their bikes to help Mikey and the gang. The other division leaders walked up in front, and after Mikey gave the order for them to fight, everyone ran into the battlefield to face off their opponents and knock some teeth out. The parking lot quickly turned into a boxing ring, and while Mikey and the other leaders destroyed all of their ops in style, Takemichi struggled to keep his feet up while trying to protect Draken from danger. Seeing that he was out of his league, Takemichi thought of giving up again, but when he remembered how Akon had died right in front of him, he decided to get up and keep fighting. Meanwhile, Mikey was pissed at Pei for betraying the gang, and he took down all of his useless minions before walking up to him and asking him why he wanted to kill Draken. But Pei hated all of them for giving up on Pa so easily, so he curled up his fist in anger and used it to punch Mikey's face multiple times while telling him to fight back like a man. However, Mikey understood his pain, and he allowed Pei to vent out all of his rage before pulling him closer for a hug, saying that he also wasn't happy about what happened to Pa. Mikey begged him to come back to the gang because all of the guys loved him, and although Pei was shocked that he didn't say no homo, he couldn't stop the tears from coming out. Everyone was still fighting, and as Takemichi searched around for Draken, he saw Kiyomasa passing by and wanted to stop him, but was shocked when he noticed the bloody knife in his hand. Kiyomasa smiled like the devil as he walked away, and when Takemichi realized that it was too late, he rushed over to meet Draken but found him lying on the floor in a pool of his own blood. Mikey was still busy trying to take out all of the Mobius guys, so Takemichi yelled out that Draken had been stabbed. But when Mikey tried to reach him, he was held back and thrown away by Hanma. He tried landing his karate kick on him, but Hanma blocked the move twice, so Mikey went in for a hard uppercut instead. And as the both of them kept fighting, Takemichi realized that Draken was actually still alive. Mikey told him to take care of Draken, and when Takemichi noticed that no one could help him, he decided to take on the challenge and carry Draken to the hospital on his back. But along the way, Takemichi realized that the mofo was really heavy and he felt like giving up already. But he just kept pushing on, until Emma and Hinata met up with him saying that they had already called an ambulance. They stopped by the roadside to wait for the bus, but when Takemichi noticed that Kiyomasa and his crew of circus freaks were headed in their direction, he knew that they were screwed. They threatened to tie him up in duct tape again, But then Draken suddenly became conscious, and because he knew that Takemichi was going to get his ass kicked, he told him to grab the girls and run away. However, when he remembered how he had been a pussy all his life, Takemichi stood his ground and told the girls to stay back, before walking up to face Kiyomasa and his goons, reminding him about their epic brawl at the Fight Club. Takemichi challenged Kiyomasa to a rematch, and when his friends realized that he was serious, they started placing bets on him, saying that he was going to defeat Kiyomasa. Encouraged by his friends' words, Takemichi charged forward to attack, but the dumbass forgot to check his opponent's weapon, and he got stabbed in the hand with a pocket knife. He managed to pull the blade out of his palm, but Takemichi was still too powerless to land a single punch on Kiyomasa, so he decided to change strategies and tackle him to the ground instead. But Kiyomasa was solid as a rock and he kept on standing, so Takemichi turned into a literal savage, jabbing his teeth deep into Kiyomasa's gut until he screamed out like a virgin tasting the forbidden fruit.
What do you mean by that?
He was able to climb onto Kiyomasa's back, and Takemichi kept on squeezing his neck in a super tight headlock, until Kiyomasa became unconscious and the both of them fell to the ground. Smiling like a crazy person, Takemichi felt happy to finally get his revenge on Kiyomasa for ruining his life. But Joker Face told him not to get too excited, because he still had to take all of them down. So Takemichi told Hinata and Emma to find a safe place to stay, and after the girls were gone, Draken got up to help him fight. Even though either of them could pass out at any moment, they stood their ground while the circus freaks charged up at them. But then out of nowhere, Akon appeared and punched Joker Face to the side, after which the other guys arrived as well to take up the fight. Seeing them risk their lives for him, Takemichi realized that although his mission wasn't a total success, he had managed to inspire his friends to never give up and keep on fighting. Shocked by their crazy passion, Joker Face and the others quickly ran away, and after the guys were done celebrating their victory, Emma and Hinata arrived with the paramedics to take Draken to the hospital. Meanwhile, back at the parking lot, Mikey was still standing like an undefeated champion, and because Hanma was too tired to keep up, he called one of his biker dudes to take him away. Everyone started to run away to avoid getting cuffed by the police, and Hanma warned Mikey about the coming of a new gang with a deadly crew before riding off in his motorcycle. Inside the ambulance, Takemichi kept praying for Draken to get better, but then he suddenly woke up and stretched his hand to him, telling him to look after Mikey before flatlining from a heart attack. The paramedics tried reviving him using CPR but with no success, so when they got to the hospital, Draken was rushed over to the operating room for an emergency heart surgery. He told the others what happened, and Emma couldn't stop herself from crying. But when Mikey arrived at the hospital, he pretended like everything was alright to avoid letting his true emotions show. Staring at the operating room, Mikey told everyone to remain confident and keep their hopes up, because Draken was too much of a fighter to die at a hospital after being stabbed by a traitor. Takemichi and the others were inspired by his words, and after spending hours in the waiting room, the doctors finally stepped out, telling them that Draken's surgery was successful. Excited by the good news, Mitsuya and the guys ran out to tell the gang members, but when Takemichi noticed that Pei was still standing, he told them that he was too ashamed to face the crew after being a traitor. However, Mitsuya told him not to worry about it because they all understood his reasons, but that despite what he had thought, Draken was actually the one who cared about Pa the most. He said that while Pa was getting his cheeks clapped at the slammer by the freaky inmates, Draken was the only one who followed his parents every day to visit him and bring gifts. Mitsuya told Pei to apologize to Draken and the others after everything was over, and while Takemichi was outside with the girls, he realized that he had successfully completed the mission that Naoto gave him. But when he noticed that Mikey wasn't with the gang, he ran around looking for him, until he found him crying outside of Draken's hospital room, after hiding his emotions throughout the night. 1 week after the fight, Takemichi became a local champion on the streets, but when he went over to greet Draken at the hospital, Draken made fun of his outfit and called him an idiot for getting hyped over one win. Annoyed by his attitude, Takemichi told Draken that he deserved to feel good after being a loser for so long. But Draken was just messing with him and he pointed to a bag on the ground, saying that it was a gift from Mikey. When he took out what was inside, Draken told him that it was Mikey's jacket from when he first became the leader of the gang, and Takemichi felt like he didn't deserve such a thing. However, Draken said that the entire gang owed him a huge debt of gratitude for everything, so he got up and bowed his head to thank Takemichi for saving his life. Wondering if he would ever be worthy of the jacket, Draken told Takemichi to talk to Mikey about it, but when he got to the rooftop, Mikey confronted him, asking him how he knew what was going to happen before time. His stupid ass was just about to say everything regarding the time travel mission with Naoto, when Mikey laughed it off and jumped down, thanking him for saving Draken and the gang. After achieving his main objective, Takemichi went over to meet Naoto so that he could return to the present, but before leaving, he gave Hinata a clover necklace to apologize for being such a shit boyfriend all this while. He looked at her pretty face one last time before shaking Naoto's hand to activate the time sequence. But when Takemichi opened his eyes, he was shocked to find himself back in his lame job at the video